1 week after the fall of Bashar al-Assad, the balance of power in the Middle East is no longer what it used to be, starting with the ideological balance in a region where the breakthrough of a certain Islamism once shunned now seems inevitable.
Nous sommes en train, me semble-t-il, de vivre.
It seems to me that we are going through the ultimate phase of the global replacement of Arab nationalism, of which someone like Nasser was perhaps the best-known representative. Replacement by what? By these Islamist regimes, which are an ideology that doesn't precisely come from Western countries, unlike nationalism and socialism as they were interpreted at the time, but which comes from the region itself.
Interprété à l'époque, mais qui vient de la région elle-même.
This new situation has taken the Gulf monarchies by surprise. Minister of State at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the UAE, Noura al-Kaabi, expresses Abu Dhabi's concern about the weakening of Iran and Israeli ambitions in Syria.
The Israeli-Iranian relationship is obviously going to be affected by this because Syria was a very important Iranian proxy. It's a pathway to Lebanon. It is now closed, and I think the Iranians are at a point in which they have to reconsider a policy in which they invested a lot of money and a lot of effort for more than a decade.
But Damascus does not overshadow Gaza, where post-war plans are multiplying, starting with a project for a major economic corridor between East and West via Israel and the Palestinian territories, which has already won the political and financial support of the Gulf states.
We see the opportunity of the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor as a means to build Israeli-Palestinian peace in the framework of an economic engine that corridor represents, to see interconnections that bring Palestinians, Israelis and Jordanians at center stage of this economic corridor.
Neighboring the Gaza Strip, Egypt is now hosting almost 100,000 additional Palestinian refugees whom the Egyptian economy is struggling to integrate. Cairo, which at the same time depends on its good relations with Israel, is faced with a dilemma.
Anything that changes the geopolitical landscape near our border is unacceptable. First point I'd like to make is, one example of that is if you forcefully displace Palestinians across the border. That's not only illegal, it also creates a security problem, not because they themselves are secure, but because you're forcing people across a sovereign border illegally. Secondly, Gaza, after the Shamir decision back in the 2000s, was empty from Israeli troops. They still had outer control of the perimeters and the entry points in many different ways. But allowing the Israeli forces to remain in Gaza means you are acknowledging or re-accepting almost de jure, I mean, de facto definitely, but almost de jure, that occupation can occur, that there's justification for occupation. And it's something that we will never accept.
But all this is without counting the unknown factor in the equation, Donald Trump, who was very active in the Middle East during his first term and whose future actions none of the political leaders interviewed at this conference can predict.